Today our guest will be Adamem Koebel, a game designer and full-time game master. Adam, welcome here. I'd like to welcome you at the Pyrkon festival. Tell me, how do you like it as compared to other conventions you were participating in?
It's unique in the sense that there is so much going on. You don't see a lot of that in like North American conventions. They're often focused on one or two things, like board games and role-playing games or movies and TV shows, but it seems like there's a very broad selection of things going on. There's a lot to see. So I've barely had a chance to take all of it in. It's still early.
You have lectures, right?
Yeah, right. I'm busy. I'm doing things.
Yeah, you're busy.
I've got some time tomorrow, so you can ask me again then.
You are one of the most famous game masters online. Contracts with Roleplay, Roll20, publishers, lots of fans, your channel. How does it feel to enjoy such a respect? Aren't you sometimes tired of, making your hobby your work?
I think that's a trick that content creators run into generally, like not just in role-playing games or in game mastering, but all of the content creators that I know have that. There's that risk of burning out. And you take something that you love and you make it your job, and it can be really fun, but you don't want to poison the things that you love by making them a necessity. So I think being very careful about my time, learning to know what to say yes to and what to say no to, really helps mitigate that, makes it a lot less of a risk. But it feels like an honor to have people care about the things that I'm doing and saying every day. It's a big deal. And so that, for me, that tempers a lot of the potential stress of doing the job, right? Where I know that I have people that are going to appreciate the work that I do. It makes it a lot easier. Feels a lot better.
It's actually visible here in Poland, for example, right? Dungeon World has a lot of fans, and I know many people that are following your channel. And actually, how did it all start, your road to success? Did you have any mentor that you were learning from?
Yeah, I think the story is kind of in two parts for me. The first being the game design element. So when Sage and I created Dungeon World, we had a ton of people in the independent publishing space that were helping us out. People who had done it before, people like John Harper, who had been publishing games for years, Luke Crane, Jason Morningstar. They all had experience, and because the gaming community in North America, especially small press, creator-owned games, is so tightly knit, people are very willing to help each other out and to provide mentorship. So for me, that's where that started, right? Being able to create and publish Dungeon World, and then having Dungeon World noticed by the streaming community and played on Roleplay kind of led me into that. And then doing the streaming stuff, obviously, having JP, who's the producer at Roleplay, kind of show me the ropes and support me in the role as game master on that channel really got me started. So I think that's sort of the biggest thing about doing something on your own, whether it's content creation or game publishing. Most of the time there's someone who's already succeeded at it and who will be willing to give you advice and to help. And
this is very important, right?
Yeah.
And exactly. So learning and also getting help from other experienced game masters and designers. But what about the stage fright? I mean, you're running 4 campaigns right now.
Yeah.
Extra sessions at conventions and various events. Do you sometimes feel nervous still? How do you deal with some elements that are stressful?
It's really easy to forget how many people are watching when you're doing it online, because the audience isn't, they're not people sitting there watching you play. They're a number that goes up and down. And so it's really easy to lose track of how many people, say 10,000 people really is. If I were in an auditorium in front of 10,000 people, it would feel a little bit different, I think, because I can ignore that number. But that being said, I really like speaking in front of people. I've always enjoyed having ideas and sharing them with an audience. So this is just a natural extension of that desire. It isn't to say that I don't get nervous sometimes if we're doing a special event or if I'm in front of a new audience or it's something that the stakes feel higher for some reason. I think there's still that nervous energy, but I think that the way to get through that is to let it empower you, let it give you energy rather than make it fear. It's exciting for me to have new people to show my work
Grabbing motivation from the
screen, yeah,
right?
exactly.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And do you have, if you have any free time, do you play role-play games for fun just with your friends?
I used to, but I just don't have the time anymore. I mean, especially because now, if I were to play with my friends, we would get together and we would say, okay, let's play a role-playing game, and there'd be that conversation of, okay, who's going to game master? And everyone would just turn and look at me. And so, I get to play occasionally, like one-shots. Conventions are really good for this. When I go to Gen Con, we're all very busy, and we don't get to start playing until midnight or 1 a.m., but it's nice to use those as opportunities to play one shots. But no, I don't have any ongoing campaigns going on at home. Just because, like you said, I got so much to do. I'm so busy already.
You're busy, yes. Yeah. You're busy. You're sharing your knowledge, and apart from game mastering, in case of considering your Dungeon World project and being the game designer, do you feel that being a game designer is a prospective career right now?
It's a tough question to answer because I don't want to say no and discourage people, but it's very, very hard to be in a position where game design is your sole job. I think a lot of the game designers that I know, that for them it is their job, either work for a bigger company, and so it's much more like a traditional job, right? They have a boss and they have a paycheck and they make games. But I think that we're starting to see the development of this space where people can create games, they can publish games in a traditional sense, and they can supplement that income with things like Patreon, where they have other game design projects, they have a blog, they make content, and that can help fill in the gap to make it a viable career. And I think that that's still changing, right? What was true for me when we made Dungeon World 6 years ago, some of those things aren't true anymore. It's easier to make games. It's easier to get an audience. There are more platforms to put your game out there. And I think people are hungry for new games, especially strange new games.
Definitely, right? Yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
They want things that do something that no game has ever done before. And I think that's very encouraging for new designers to be able to say, whatever your weird idea is, there's somebody out there who's really excited to see it.
Yeah, I think so. I totally agree. And this is actually the idea of creating Dungeon World. Where actually was it born?
I think
first when you were thinking of it.
Yeah, most game design is born out of necessity. It's about solving problems. Whether you're solving a problem at your table and you're creating a new monster for Dungeons and Dragons because there isn't one that you need, or you're writing an adventure or creating a class, I think that game design starts there. It's about solving a problem. And for us, for Sage and I, the problem was that we were both playing Dungeons and Dragons and not having any fun. And for me, the group that I was playing with, they were inexperienced role players. They didn't want to learn all of the rules of D&D, but they wanted to play D&D. They wanted to have fantasy adventures. And so we sat down and I said, okay, we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons. Here are the rules. And they just said, we don't want to learn those. We're not interested in putting in the time. We're going to just tell you what our characters do, and you tell me which of these weird dice to roll and what happens. And so Sage and I were both having this experience separately, and we started playing Apocalypse World, Vincent Baker's game. And we were really enjoying it, and we were feeling like the design of that game really fit with the kind of experience we were having with D&D, even though the themes and the characters were really different. And so we independently started working on a fantasy version of Apocalypse World. And then we met at a convention, which is part, I think, of why conventions are so important, because you never know who you might meet there and how it might affect you.
And can try your product.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and if we hadn't met, if I hadn't gone to that convention and met Sage, my entire life would be different now, right? Everything kind of goes back to that moment. And we realized we were both working on a similar game, and we started talking over email and collaborating, and we decided to take our designs and merge them and make them one game, and then that's when we decided to make Dungeon World.
And exactly. So being brave and getting feedback and trying your product. So this is the most important element that aspiring game designers should be aware of, or if you were to give an advice for people that want to show their product.
Yeah, I think that a lot of designers, a lot of fledgling designers are afraid that their game is going to be bad. And it's much worse if nobody knows about your game. You can fix a bad game, but if no one knows that it exists, it doesn't matter if it's bad or good, no one's playing it. So taking prototypes of your game, going to conventions, engaging with communities online, and sharing what you have, sharing the beta version and talking about your game and exposing it to criticism will improve it, and it'll build you an audience. And I think that's so much easier to do now than it used to be. There are so many big, interesting communities around role-playing, both online and in real life. And so it's much easier. It's just a question, like you said, of being brave, of taking what you have and getting out there and showing it to people.
And what about the criticism? How you deal with it? Do you have any special methods? You're an experienced game designer and game master, so you're used to actually some feedback, right? But how to deal with it?
I think the communities that we belong to around like fandom and role-playing games can be aggressive about their feedback. They're not gentle when you make a mistake or you do something they don't like.
Exactly.
But I try to remember that there are worse games than any game I've ever made that have made a lot of money and are very popular. So it's not about the game being universally bad or good. It's not about it being something that you've made and that people don't like. It's about finding the people that do connect with your work and listening to them, the people that care about it, that aren't dismissing it because it's different from what they're used to, but they have accurate feedback because they care about it. I think that we live in kind of a strange age where criticism is seen as like a betrayal of things. I get criticized all the time because I have lots of things to say about Dungeons & Dragons that aren't all flattering, but I love D&D. But because the internet is the way that it is, and because we live in this very kind of aggressive ideological time,
very condensed
environment. People take criticism to mean that you hate the thing, that you can't love something that you criticize, which I think is fundamentally untrue. I think that the kindest thing you can do for a designer is tell them what you think about their game, because it'll help them make it better. And I try to remember that when people have criticism, whether it's about a show that I'm doing or it's about a game design or anything like that. When they're criticizing it, it's because they care about it enough to reach out and to say something. And I think that's a gift.
And to make you actually, I think, to make you do more iterations, which is very important one, you know, when you are doing creative job, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, playtesting and exposing it to an audience.
Exactly. And so this, giving feedback and getting this feedback, this is, I think, very important, as you said. And what about the future of the role-play game market, role-play games at all? What do you think? What are your greatest fears or hopes?
Role-playing games are going through something of a renaissance right now. There are more people who are new to role-playing games in the last couple of years than there have been since the 80s. We're seeing this massive upswell, and most people are experiencing that through things like Critical Role and through Dungeons & Dragons, right? They're a brand new audience who've never played a game before. And I think that it's really cool that that's building and that there's this huge D&D fan base. And what I'm interested in the next few years is watching those people learn that there are other games, right? And moving on and trying out those other games, whether it's Dungeon World or Burning Wheel or Vampire or Call of Cthulhu, like learning that D&D is not the only thing and spreading out. And then the next step from there is making their own games. So in 5 or 10 years, we're going to have hundreds and hundreds of brand new game designers who learned from playing D&D for the first time because they watched Matt and his friends on Critical Role. So I think we're in a really special time for RPGs, and I think that it's really picking up cultural steam, and that's very exciting. And I think that actual play and things like Twitch and YouTube are going to play into that, and it's going to be the way that people find out about new games.
Yeah, these are actually the channels, the ways through, thanks to them, people can learn and know a lot about role-playing games. I think here in Poland, actually, this is very popular. And once we are publishing right now the 7th edition of Call of Cthulhu, I see it spreads actually. And your channel, I know many people that are talking about you as the game master. And so the world is more condensed and it's getting smaller, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think, considering this YouTube and channels, apart from, of course, your channels, do you watch others? Who is worth actually right now?
That's it's the curse of the content creator. You're so busy making things, you barely have any time to watch. I just I don't have time. And for me, the way that I get exposed to new things is through collaboration. So I have people that will reach out to me and say, I'm working on a game, I'm going to be putting it on Kickstarter. Would you like to take a look at it on your channel? Or I'll do a show and I'll go looking for new players for that show. And that's when I have fans suggest people and I'll get access to it. But to actually sit down and watch a campaign, even the campaign run by someone that's like a close friend of mine, is a luxury I don't think any of us have. We're all just making things for other people. But maybe one day when I'm retired, I'll go back and I'll watch all the stuff that I missed from when I was so busy making my own content.
Yeah, it actually takes time, I know.
It really does, yeah. Yeah, and that's what I value so much about the fans, because they're willing to put in that time and that energy and to engage with the material. You know, we're on the 110th episode of Court of Swords now, and those are 4-hour episodes. That's hundreds and hundreds of hours of content. And I know that there are people who have watched all of it more than once. And while I don't have that time, it's extremely valuable, and I appreciate so much that people make the time for that.
They love it, right?
Yeah.
So actually, this is your job. They're actually enjoying it and enjoy your passion, because you're the guy who actually spreads this happiness of doing it because you love it, right? And this is your job. This is fantastic. Adam, thank you very much for the interview.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It was nice and great pleasure to meet you and to have you here. Enjoy the rest of the Pyrkon Festival,
Thank you, I will.
and don't be busy too much.
I won't.
Thank you very much.